So I'm busy deciding where my engine needs to be located, and in my previous video I discovered that I need to move it back quite a bit to provide clearance for the radiator up front. And yes, to move it back I need to cut a big opening in the firewall, and to do that I've got to take the engine out again. Welcome back to the shop, you oaks. If you don't know me, my name is Div and I'm busy with this 1939 Hudson Rat Rod build. I'm in the process of trying to marry quite a few different components. I've got an Isuzu frame, I've got that 351 Cleveland, and I'm busy deciding where everything should go. And yes, like I've just said, I've got to take that engine out now so I can cut the opening in the firewall and do a few other things, as you will see later on in the video. So why does nobody come and visit me when I need them? I would have liked to have a hand to take the engine out, but it looks like I'm just going to have to do it by myself, as usual. Okay, so let's see how this is going to work out. Okay, I got it sitting on my rusty trolley, and that actually went quite smoothly. How many times do you actually spend more time thinking about something than just doing it? That was painless. Let's get the thing off the chain block so we can push it out of the way and carry on with what is required next. If I can just get my horrible knots undone. Here we go. Let's see, where are we going to put this fellow? Right, so with the engine out of the way, I can now easily cut out this whole section here. I'm also going to cut off this piece here because it's not required or necessary anymore. Same here. I got a big hole here now, so I can put that engine anywhere I want. Of course, somewhere down the line I'm going to have to close it up again, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So in my previous video I also discovered that the back end of the gearbox, when it's here, this cross member is in the way. The gearbox needs to sit down a little bit more and more back. So this section here, I'm going to have to cut it out so that we can locate the gearbox correctly, and then once I'm happy with where it sits, I would need to fabricate something new here. As for the substructure from the floor, this beam running across here, that's also in the way. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to put in this piece like I did in the back to create a tunnel here. Well, it's going to be so much easier to work on that cross member when I've taken the cab off again, and that will also give me an opportunity to finish the welding on all these mounting brackets I've been building. So let's take this puppy off. Okay, cool, so I've got my cab on trestles and I can do some welding here, and I've got my frame exposed for easy access to do what I have to do there. So I can now take off this old original gearbox mounting plate. Oh yucky, what a mess in there. I'm going to have to clean this up a bit and then we can cut this section out. So I have a big opening here now, and when I get the engine gearbox back in, I can line it up, and then we'll build a bracket here for that rear gearbox mounting and connect this cross member again. We'll see how that works out when I put the engine and the gearbox back in. Yeah, so once I've got the cab up here on the trestles, I might as well do some of the welds and finish some of the welding on the mountings brackets here that I've been building. So next up I'm going to stick this piece in here. This one is a duplicate of the one in the back. I made that and this piece in the previous video when I started building the floor substructure. So once I've got this welded in place, I can cut out that bit And then I will have the beginnings of my tunnel. I would still have to do something about that crossmember there later on. Okay, let me just make sure that it's on its marks so that it's center. That looks good. Okay, so I'm gonna have to crawl in here so I can weld this on the back. So yeah, I tend to go into SOS mode a lot more these days. You know what that means, right? SOS, slower, older, but also smarter. And I'm just looking at this business and I'm thinking to myself, if I flip this cab onto its back, it will be so much easier to work here. And I don't have to work upside down to cut out this section and weld it all up. So I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to hoist it and flip it on its back. As soon as I'm finished with the slower part of my mode. So I want to do the same thing here to complete the tunnel and then put a piece in like this on both sides. There's another structural part. But now I'm a doubting Thomas and I'm starting to wonder if this radius is big enough and if it might not have to be slightly bigger, as that gearbox sits around here somewhere. I'm not 100% sure now. So I think I'm not going to do this one yet. I'd rather want to play it safe and stick the cab back on. It's not like the cab's going to be going on for the last time anyway. So let's just first check it out. Yes, so flipping this cap onto its back was definitely worth the trouble. It just made it so much easier to do this and to finish up all the outstanding welding. And it's also actually now giving me a very good opportunity to have a look in here under the dash to see what's going on in there. Sure, it's rusty in here, eh? And here's some of the original sound deadening material still. But how's this? This looks like the original vacuum operated wiper motor. How about that? And it looks like it still works too. Here's the pipe that provides the vacuum. Here's the switch, that works. And if I switch it on, I don't know if you can hear it, but you can hear the air moving in there. I think it'll actually be cool to get this thing to work again. Just for the fun of it. And this original bonnet latch mechanism or wood latch mechanism is still fully functional. Check this. It's got like an over center function here. So that last bit locks it. And then we release it. How cool is that? I love it. And this here is the original handbrake, also still fully functional. So maybe we can make that work down the line as well. So I stripped out the original ignition switch. So yes, it's got its electrical cables. But look at this, it's also got like a mechanical cable that goes in the back here. So it seems to me that when you turn the ignition key, somehow this mechanical cable will activate it as well to do something. I don't know, I'm fascinated by it. If anybody knows what this is all about, let me know in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. So apart from that rusty mess in there, I've still got some other patches like this one here that needs attention as well. Also some holes in the doors. But I'm going to ignore all that for now, because my mission at the moment is to do motor mounts. So I'm going to put this cap back onto the frame now, so we can see how all that is going to work out. This roof beam here sits at about a 5-degree angle. So to go uphill, I've got this little pulley system with this piece of rope. Yeah, it works quite well. What do you think? Oh man, it's still not right. It needs to go further back still. But when I zoom in, let me show you what's going on in there. Can you see? Can't go further back because it's catching here against this member, this cross member here. So I'm going to have to cut it here and give more clearance so it can move even further back. It still needs to go back about, I would say, at least 4 inches or 100 more, if not more. Yeah, so it's back to square one, I guess. I'm going to have to take it out again. And my feeling about this piece was right too. If I move the whole engine gearbox assembly back, I'm going to start fouling here. So, so I've actually made this piece for nothing. I'm going to have to cut it out and make a larger one. And I can go and hang this one on the wall of shame. Engine out again, cab off again. I can do some more trimming of my cross member here. Tell you one thing that's not a lie, this Isuzu frame will never be the same again. But I think I've got enough clearance now for getting my gearbox in here. Hey, but I messed up, yeah, eh? This is too small. Shows you must never assume. So I think I'm just going to cut it out. Put the cab back on, put the engine back in, get that gearbox in its position. And then I can actually decide and see what I need to do here. So I just think before I cut it out, I'm just going to install a cross brace like this. Just to help me keep things in place. So I'll just tack this on and then I'll cut that out. So I've got some wooden blocks under the gearbox. I've got a little jack here under the sump, and I'm still hanging from the roof as well with a chain block. I don't have any idea yet whether the engine is central. I haven't checked that. I need to still check the angle and all of that as well, the engine angle, or whether it lines up with that carrier bearing. But for now, my first thing is I want to see if it's back far enough, because I need that clearance up here for a radiator. So I'm just going to stick this grill shell back in place so that we can see what is happening up front here. Yeah, so this business is actually turning into quite a dilemma. This grill shell needs to sit where it is to ensure that the fender arches line up with the wheels. The grill shell is quite narrow, and that's going to determine where the radiator needs to sit. And then that radiator position will determine where the engine sits in the 4.5 position. So this is the way things currently stand. I can fit a radiator in here. The narrowest one I can find off the shelf is a 24-inch radiator. So that would sit right here, 610 millimeters. But as you can see, for a radiator to mount here, the standard fan would have to go. So I can take that off and run an electric fan. However, even if I take the fan off, I think the engine might still have to move back a little bit more. And as it is now, the engine is so far back that I've got a whole other set of problems. Let me show you that. This freaking engine is already halfway into the cab, man. Okay, not quite halfway, but you know what I mean. So I'm going to be running out of leg room for pedal assemblies and my feet and all of that. I mean, if a firewall would have to sit here, which is ridiculous. And then it's going to be extremely difficult to actually even work on the engine and take off the tappet covers. No man, this plan's not going to work. I'm going to have to dream up something else. And I have no choice but to move this engine further forward again. Because this just ain't going to work. So I'm in that thinking chair, and I've now got two options. I can run a radiator in the back, which means I can pretty much put this engine as far forward as I want. I've done that before. It's a whole different ball game and a lot of extra work. Running pipes to the back, mounting it somewhere, electric fans, all the rest of it, scoops, and yeah. Or I can see if I can find a narrower radiator. Maybe find someone that can custom build me a specific radiator, because the narrower I can make the radiator, the further forward I can move it in my tapering grill shell, and every inch I can go forward will help to improve the situation. So I think I'm going to first investigate the possibility of a narrower radiator. So I called around, checked up with some of my connections, and I ended up chatting to a guy called Etienne from Silverton Radiators in George. It's quite a large town, about 75 kilometers from me, so it's not that far. And he said, yes, you could or can build me a radiator that's quite tall and quite narrow. Apparently he's going to use the core from a BMW of, I'm not sure which model. I'll still get more information from him. But he gave me some dimensions. So let's see. So I made this mock-up from some hardboard and old scrap bits of wood. So I've got a wooden radiator now, based on the dimensions he gave me. So let's see what we need to do to get this to fit. So I've made this opening here, I've cut it back. So now my mock-up radiator should be able to go in here. Yes, it only just fits. Let's see now. Drop it down as far down as it can go. To sit about something like that. I've made this a little bit bigger than the dimensions I received, so we should be safe there. And this bit sticking up does actually fit in underneath the hood, so we can afford that too. So yeah, based on the assumption that my dimensions is correct, this will work. So I've now moved the engine forward, and if I just shine a light in here, hopefully you can see there, I can get about 2 fingers in between the water pump pulley and my mock-up radiator, so we've got clearance here, so that should work. So I'm not going to have a fan on the engine, so the plan now is to run an electric fan on the front side of the radiator. So yeah, maybe a bit tricky to see, but there's a lot of space in front of the radiator. Take a peek through this hole here. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus better. Yeah, tricky to see. But we've got space in front of the radiator, inside the grill shell, so I should be able to fit the electric fan in there. And now I've got the engine forward far enough that it's almost clearing where the original firewall used to sit. So if I just make my new firewall about there somewhere, we will be fine, and we're not sticking much into the cab anymore, so that's nice. And okay, it's a bit tricky to understand what's going on here, but here on the inside of the cab I've got enough space here now for my pedal assemblies, and there's going to be enough leg room even if I build my tunnel assembly here for the gearbox. So I think we're going to be good from that point of view as well. So with everything now based on the dimensions of my mock-up radiator, I have finally determined a 4.5 position for this engine, which is quite a milestone. Yeah, so I think I'm going to build myself engine mountings and transmission mountings based on this. About the only thing that can go wrong now is that the radiator place can't build me a radiator that's the same size or slightly smaller than my mock-up. So the worst case scenario will be that it doesn't work, and then I'll have to run a radiator in the back. But let's hope that works out. I'm going to take my mock-up to them, see if they can build me that radiator. And then in the next video we'll get into building transmission mountings and engine mountings. So thanks for hanging out with me here in the shop. I enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, have a lekker one.